Last video I showed you a technique to make powerful yet super easy 360 head turns. That method involved drawing heads in different positions and then setting them up in a rig so they snap between those views. It was easy, fast and intuitive, at least in my opinion. But the result is that the head jumps between preset positions, which is useful for real animation workflows, but what if you want the head to smoothly rotate, like a more traditional 360 rig? In this video I'll show you how to do that. This video will build upon the previous one, so I won't go into details on things I already explained there. Make sure to check it out, the link is in the description. And let me spoil the method right away. What we're going to use to achieve these smooth rotations is a very powerful grease pencil feature called Interpolate sequence. All animation inside the grease pencil is fundamentally frame by frame, but with this tool, Blender can automatically generate in-between frames, between the keyframes. All you have to do is to place the playhead between two frames you want to interpolate, make sure the correct layer is selected, go to Grease Pencil, Interpolate Sequence, or better yet use the shortcut Ctrl-Shift-E. This opens up a panel where you can choose how many in-between frames you want to generate. I'll use one for this entire video, which gives us the smoothest possible result. Blender will automatically generate a series of frames between the two keyframes. Now, this is far from perfect, as you'll quickly notice when you try it, but if you understand how it works, you can really take advantage of it. However, if you don't know the ins and outs, the result can be very confusing. So let's go over that. Here I am in Inkscape, because it's much easier to explain how path and strokes work using a proper vector tool. There are 4 concepts you need to understand to properly use Interpolate sequence: starting node, path direction, node count, and shape order. Starting node. Interpolate sequence needs to know which point in one shape corresponds to which point in the next. To do that, it relies on the starting node of a path. Every vector shape keeps track of the first and last node created, and this also defines the path direction. In Inkscape you can see the starting node by selecting the path with the node tool and pressing tab to cycle through the nodes. The first node you land on is the starting node. In this example, I'll create 2 similar diamond shapes. Pay attention to where I place the first node in each one. Now in Blender, I've placed each diamond on a different frame. If I run Interpolate sequence, Blender will try to match the first node of one shape with the first node of the other, and you'll see the interpolation does not go as you'd expect it. It turns around to match the first node. You can visualize the first node position in Blender by enabling stroke direction in edit mode. The start node shows in green and the end node in red. To fix this issue, you need consistent starting nodes. In Blender you can manually set it by using Edit, Set Start Point, but this only changes the start, not the end, which can create inconsistencies, so I generally avoid it. In Inkscape, changing the starting node requires a small trick. Select the node before the one you want as the new start, then break the path. Now there are 2 nodes overlapping here, join them together. This remakes the path, creating a new starting point, one node after the break. Path direction. The second concept is path direction. Every path has a direction based on how the nodes were created. For example, I can draw one node clockwise and another counterclockwise, and even if they share the same starting node position, they have different directions. In Inkscape you can enable the path direction display in the node preferences. From now on, enabling Show Outline lets you see arrows indicating the direction. If you interpolate between 2 shapes with opposite directions, they will flip during the transition. In Blender you can fix this in edit mode by going to Stroke, Flip Direction. And in Inkscape you can go to Path, Reverse. Node count. This one is critical. If 2 shapes have a different number of nodes, Blender will create new nodes automatically, during the interpolation, and often in unpredictable places. This leads to messy interpolations, even if the shapes look identical. For clean results, both shapes need the exact same number of nodes. If needed, just add extra nodes in one shape and place them strategically, even if they are not notable in the path. They'll help you get the interpolation you want. Shape order. Finally, there is the shape order. The most common use for interpolate sequence is to use it with more than one shape at a time. Interpolate sequence uses set order to determine which shape matches with which. Here I have a circle and a square. In one frame the square is on top and on the other it's below. When I interpolate them, Blender mismatches them. To fix this, make sure the C order is consistent. You can fix this in Inkscape, but also in Blender using Ctrl up arrow or Ctrl down arrow. So going back to our case, here I have all the head views that I want to rotate between, along with the different eyes and mouths that I want to be able to swap. If you watched the previous video, you'll know that I built this character using a head asset pack I made with different features. By the way, you can get it for free, link in the description. Now, when I originally made the asset pack, I wasn't thinking about using it with interpolate sequence. Some of the assets might work fine, but you can't rely on them working out of the box. One thing you could do is to go one by one through every single part and make sure they all satisfy the 4 rules we talked about earlier. I actually tried doing that and it was incredibly slow, tedious and very prone to error. Inkscape also has a tendency to add nodes on top of each other to fix geometry without telling you, which completely throws everything off. So I found a better and faster way. The solution is to take advantage of duplication. When you duplicate a shape or group, you get an exact copy, including node count, structure and set order. So we can use that to our advantage. Here's what I did to make the whole process much faster and easier. First, move all the head views into a new document, then pick one view, usually the front view, and clean it up a bit. Make sure the paths use the minimum number of nodes necessary. This makes everything easier to manage and cleaner for later. Then build every other view starting from duplicates of that base shape. Try not to introduce unnecessary nodes or shapes that could break the interpolation. Here's another useful trick. Since I already had the assets, what I did was to lower the opacity and then lock them. Then starting from a clean duplicate version, I started to trace over it to make it match to the shape of the locked reference underneath. Now there is an important problem you run into. In some views you go from having 2 shapes, for example 2 eyes, to only one visible shape in a side view. You can't interpolate with something that doesn't exist, so the solution is to create a duplicate that will be hidden behind the visible one. That way both frames still have the same number of shapes. You'll see me doing this with the eyes. The same idea applies to other features. For example, with the teeth. In the front view you see 4 teeth, but in the side view only 2 are visible. So what I did was to keep the extra teeth and simply hide them behind the others. Another example is the glasses. In 3/4 and side view you can see the arms, but in front view you don't. So what I did was to hide a very thin version of the arms inside of the lens shape, so there is still something there for the interpolation to work with. Here is a slightly different problem. Take a look at this mouth. In one 3/4 view, the cheek details appears on the right, and on the opposite view, it appears on the left. If we interpolate directly, the cheek would awkwardly jump from one side to the other. The solution is simple. Create a duplicate where the cheek is on the opposite side. Then when interpolating, you use that correct shape so the transition feels natural. You have to do this for any feature that changes side like that. Also, if you're using a single layer for the eyes, eyebrows or ears like I am, you will need to manage these duplicates carefully. If you want to avoid headaches, I strongly recommend you to separate each feature into its own layer. And that's basically it. Setting up assets for interpolate sequence isn't actually difficult. You just need a bit of familiarity with Inkscape, which by the way you can learn here on the channel. So don't forget to like and subscribe for more videos on Inkscape illustration and animation in Blender. And check out my step-by-step tutorials if you want to learn how to create the art for your animations. And if you really want to master Inkscape from the ground up, I have a bundle of 13 full courses covering character design, background art, game art, and more, all aimed at beginners who want to get into illustration for animation. I also recently added a 30-day program to help you go through everything as a structured bootcamp. Link in the description. Now in Blender, I imported the document. I follow the same setup as before, making copies of each frame, but this time I spaced the keyframes 10 frames apart to leave room for interpolation. Then I isolate one feature per frame, just like in the previous video. I won't repeat that process here, so check that video if you need. Now for the fun part. Go through each pair of keyframes and press Ctrl-Shift-E to interpolate sequence. Make sure all layers is enabled and use selection is disabled. If everything was correctly set up in Inkscape, it should work perfectly. If something goes wrong, it's usually a set order issue. You can fix minor problems directly in Blender by using Ctrl up and down. When dealing with the head, the main issue here is the ears. When the head turns, one ear should go behind the head. The clean solution is to use separate layers, one in front and one behind, along with a mask. But since we only have 10 frames between poses, I want to show you how you can fix them manually. So here I'll go frame by frame and erase the part of the ear that should be hidden. But before that, if you're having problems with the eraser, it's probably because these are Bezier curves. You can fix this by going to Stroke, Simplify, Resample. Then switch to Draw mode, pick the eraser and erase the part where it should be behind the head in each frame. I do something similar with the nose. In the side view, I don't like this line that I made only so it can interpolate smoothly with the other nose. So after making the interpolation, I erase that side in the last 2 frames. Now that the interpolation is done, we set up the armature. This is exactly the same as in the previous video, so I won't overburden you with it. Just watch that video instead. The only difference in this whole process is the driver setup. When writing the expressions, we multiply by 10 so the animation plays faster, and we don't cast to int, so even with the multiplication by 10 we can still play all the frames. In the case of the other 2 drivers that switch between the features, this time we do need to cast to int, so it snaps to the 10 frame increment and skip all the other frames in between. And here it is, a smoothly rotating head built from just a few drawings. The key idea here is that if you're comfortable drawing in Inkscape, you don't need complex rigs. Most of the work is in preparing the drawings. Doing the interpolation itself is actually really fast and easy. You can think of this as an alternative to complex rigging, especially for main body shapes. Some facial details may still benefit from a traditional rig, but this method is incredibly powerful and intuitive. If you want to learn how to draw for animation, don't forget to like and subscribe. I try to upload every week. And if you want to truly master Inkscape for character design, backgrounds and animation, check out my full bundle of 13 courses, plus the 30-day program. Link in the description. That's it for this video, see you on the next one, bye.